Imagine your quiet, unassuming neighbor, the one you might pass in the hallway, exchange polite nods with, or occasionally run into at the mailbox. Now imagine finding out that this neighbor, someone who lived just steps away, was harboring a dark, twisted secret. A secret that involved months of stalking, of violent crime, and a body hidden right outside your door. How does someone who blends so seamlessly into everyday life become capable of such unspeakable evil? Today, we're diving deep into the haunting case of Stephen McDaniel, a law student who brutally murdered his classmate and neighbor, Lauren Giddings, in one of the most chilling crimes you've likely never heard of. Get ready, because this case will make you question everything you think you know about the people around you. In 2011, Stephen McDaniel and Lauren Giddings lived side by side in the same apartment complex near Mercer University's law school in Macon, Georgia. Both were recent graduates of Mercer's law program, navigating the stressful, uncertain time between finishing school and preparing for the bar exam. Yet despite their similar paths, their lives and personalities couldn't have been more different. Lauren Giddings was the kind of person who left a lasting impression on everyone she met. Described by friends and family as kind, outgoing, and full of life, Lauren was deeply loved by those around her. At 27, she was not only a talented law graduate, but someone with a bright future. She was excited to pursue a career in criminal law and was making plans for her future. To those who knew her, Lauren was destined for success. Stephen McDaniel, on the other hand, was known to be socially awkward and reclusive. Although he had made it through law school, McDaniel didn't stand out academically or socially. Classmates often described him as quiet and somewhat of a loner, someone who didn't seem to connect with others easily. He lived in the same apartment complex as Lauren, but never seemed to have much of a social circle. He kept to himself and flew under the radar for most of his time in school, yet beneath the surface, Stephen McDaniel's thoughts had become increasingly dark, focused obsessively on Lauren. What no one realized at the time was that McDaniel's fascination with Lauren had grown into a dangerous obsession, one that would end in tragedy. That it was late June of 2011 when friends and family of Lauren Giddings began to worry. Lauren was in the thick of bar exam preparations, an intense and stressful period for any law school graduate. But despite this, she had always made a point to stay in touch with her loved ones, particularly her family. When she suddenly stopped responding to messages and phone calls, her friends began to sense that something was wrong. After a few days of no contact, Lauren's friends decided to visit her apartment. Her car was still parked outside, and her door was locked. From the outside, nothing seemed obviously wrong, but the silence was unsettling. They called the police, reporting Lauren as a missing person. At first, authorities approached the case with caution. Missing adults, especially those as busy and stressed as law students, often turn up after a few days. Maybe Lauren had simply left to clear her mind, or maybe she was staying with a friend. However, as officers began searching the area, they quickly realized that this was no ordinary disappearance. The police entered Lauren's apartment, but they didn't find any signs of forced entry or a struggle. Everything seemed relatively normal, but there was one glaring issue. Lauren was nowhere to be found. With mounting concerns, the police decided to expand their search beyond her apartment. That's when they made a discovery that would turn the entire case upside down. That investigators scoured the area around the apartment complex. They decided to search the dumpsters behind the building. Inside one of the trash bins, they found something horrifying: a human torso, dismembered and carefully wrapped, leaving no doubt that a terrible crime had been committed. It wasn't long before they confirmed that the torso belonged to Lauren Giddings. The discovery shocked everyone, from Lauren's family to her friends, classmates, and the entire community of Macon. How could this happen to someone so full of life, right in the middle of what should have been one of the most exciting times of her career? Who could have done this, and why? As the investigation intensified, the focus turned to the people closest to Lauren. Police began interviewing neighbors, friends, and classmates. One of those interviewed was Stephen McDaniel, the quiet neighbor who lived just steps away from Lauren. McDaniel, who had never been close to Lauren, seemed strangely detached in his interviews. But no one could have predicted what was about to unfold in the immediate aftermath of Lauren's disappearance and the discovery of her torso. Local news reporters flocked to the scene to cover the story. Stephen McDaniel, like several other neighbors, was approached for an interview. What happened next became one of the most disturbing moments of the entire case. In the interview, McDaniel spoke in a calm, almost robotic tone. He expressed concern for Lauren and said he hadn't seen her in days. But everything changed when the reporter casually mentioned that a body had been found. McDaniel's demeanor shifted instantly. His calm exterior shattered, and he began stammering, visibly shocked by the news. His face went pale, and he struggled to form coherent sentences. Clearly rattled by the information, this reaction raised immediate red flags for the authorities. Why would McDaniel, who had been following the investigation closely, not know about the body being found? And why had his reaction been so extreme? The police decided to take a closer look at Stephen McDaniel. At first glance, Stephen McDaniel seemed like an unlikely suspect. He was quiet, polite, and had never caused any trouble. But as investigators began to dig into his background, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The first major breakthrough came when police searched McDaniel's apartment. Inside, they found a master key to the apartment complex, one that McDaniel had stolen from the building's maintenance office. This key gave him access to all of the units in the building, including Lauren's apartment. Investigators also discovered a hacksaw, which was later determined to be the same tool used to dismember Lauren's body, but the most damning evidence came from McDaniel's computer. Police uncovered a trail of internet searches that revealed McDaniel's dark, obsessive thoughts. He had been researching how to commit murder, how to dismember a body, and how to dispose of a corpse without getting caught. He had also been stalking Lauren, watching her through the windows of her apartment, and even recording videos of her without her knowledge. As investigators pieced together the evidence, it became clear that McDaniel had been planning this crime for months. His quiet, introverted persona had hidden a twisted mind, one that had grown increasingly obsessed with controlling and possessing Lauren through the evidence gathered. Police were able to piece together the sequence of events leading up to Lauren's murder. On the night of June 25, 2011, McDaniel broke into Lauren's apartment using the stolen master key. He had been watching her for months and knew her routines well. That night, he crept into her apartment while she slept. In the early hours of the morning, McDaniel attacked Lauren, strangling her to death. The crime was cold, calculated, and horrifying. After killing her, McDaniel dismembered her body using the hacksaw found in his apartment. He carefully wrapped the torso and discarded it in the dumpster behind the apartment complex. Likely hoping that the rest of the body would never be found for days, McDaniel continued on as if nothing had happened. He interacted with his neighbors, gave interviews to the press, and pretended to be concerned about Lauren's disappearance, all while knowing exactly what had happened to her. His ability to carry on with such composure in the face of his monstrous actions shocked both investigators and the public with mounting evidence. Police arrested Stephen McDaniel on July 1st, 2011. His arrest marked the beginning of a long and bizarre legal process. In the initial stages of his interrogation, McDaniel remained eerily calm. He denied any involvement in Lauren's death, insisting that he had no idea what had happened to her. But investigators continued to press him. As the interrogation wore on, McDaniel's composure began to crack. He became increasingly agitated, eventually confessing to the murder of Lauren Giddings. His confession was chilling in its coldness. He admitted to stalking her, breaking into her apartment, and killing her in the middle of the night. Despite his confession, McDaniel's behavior remained bizarre. During the interrogation, he often sat in silence for long stretches of time, staring blankly at the wall or mumbling incoherently. His mental state became a point of concern, but ultimately, he was deemed competent to stand trial. Stephen McDaniel's trial was highly anticipated, drawing attention from true crime enthusiasts, legal experts, and the media alike. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and it seemed inevitable that he would be convicted. However, McDaniel's defense team began exploring the possibility of an insanity plea. They argued that he was not mentally stable at the time of the crime, claiming that his obsessive behavior and actions were a result of a mental illness. This tactic, however, faced considerable scrutiny. McDaniel had been able to plan and execute the murder meticulously, which raised questions about his mental state. How could someone who was so calculated in his actions suddenly be deemed insane? His ability to engage in conversations and express himself in interviews was also used against him. Prosecutors argued that he was fully aware of his actions and that his obsessive fixation on Lauren was a conscious choice rather than a sign of insanity. As the trial progressed, the prosecution presented a wealth of evidence, including McDaniel's internet searches, the stolen key, and the hacksaw. The defense tried to undermine the validity of the evidence, but it was clear to the jury that McDaniel's actions were premeditated and cold-blooded. Ultimately, in 2014, McDaniel struck a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. He pleaded guilty to the murder of Lauren Giddings in exchange for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. This plea deal was both shocking and relieving to many who had followed the case. It meant that McDaniel would be held accountable for his actions, but it also prevented the family from having to endure a long, drawn-out trial. The murder of Lauren Giddings left an indelible mark on the Mercer University community and the city of Macon. Many were left grappling with the reality that such a horrific crime could occur in their midst. Friends, family, and classmates of Lauren were devastated by her loss. She was not just a victim. She was a person with dreams, ambitions, and a promising future. That Lauren's family took an active role in advocating for justice after her death. They worked tirelessly to raise awareness about violence against women and the importance of recognizing the signs of obsessive behavior in relationships. They also established a foundation in Lauren's name to support young women pursuing careers in law and public service. The case also sparked discussions about safety in college communities. Many students began to reflect on their own environments, questioning how well they knew their neighbors and whether they truly felt safe in their own homes. The chilling nature of the crime brought awareness to the fact that sometimes danger can come from those we least expect. In the years since the case, McDaniel has remained behind bars, serving his life sentence. Occasionally, he has been mentioned in the media, often in the context of discussions about violent crimes or mental illness. His case serves as a stark reminder of how a seemingly ordinary person can harbor dark intentions. The legacy of the Lauren Giddings case extends beyond the tragedy itself. It raises unsettling questions about how we perceive those around us and the potential for violence in our everyday lives. The idea that someone who lives just steps away from us could commit such an atrocious act is both terrifying and sobering. That Lauren's story serves as a reminder of the importance of paying attention to our surroundings and the behaviors of those around us. It encourages open conversations about mental health and the warning signs of dangerous behavior. Additionally, it emphasizes the need for communities to come together to support victims of violence and to advocate for safety in public spaces. As for Stephen McDaniel, his case stands as a chilling example of how a person can maintain a facade of normalcy while hiding their true nature. It challenges us to consider how well we truly know the people in our lives and whether we're aware of the dangers that may be lurking nearby. In closing, the case of Stephen McDaniel and Lauren Giddings is a tragic story filled with complexity, fear, and heartbreak. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that evil can exist in the most unsuspecting places.